Welcome to A Pint with Seaniebee. Today's podcast coming to you from Paris, where I managed to catch up with one of my great friends and former colleagues, Andy Greenaway. Andy is a big name in advertising in Asia. He has worked there and lived there for almost 2 decades and headed up some of the biggest agencies in the region. Myself and Andy worked together as colleagues in Saatchi Saatchi in the middle noughties for about 4 years. Andy's got a great outlook on life, very nice fella, a guy who considers and thinks a lot, and the guy's got a lot of points of view, and I hope, and you'll see, a lot of the wisdom that he has to share. So without further ado, over to a rather noisy hotel in Paris. Andy Greenaway. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Johnny. Good to be here in Gay Paris.
I wanted to talk to you first about your early days and how you ended up getting into advertising and what were some of the seminal moments that happened.
I went to quite a famous college that was known for generating advertising guys. You could only get into an advertising agency in those days if you were part of a team, if you were a copywriter and art director. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't. I was by myself. So I actually didn't get into advertising. I went into direct marketing instead. So my first job was with O&M Direct. At that time, the direct marketing business was exploding, and they couldn't get the talent because everyone wanted to go into advertising. So I got paid more money. I worked really hard, got paid more money. Every 3 months I was getting a pay rise. And suddenly I got a company car, and I became a group head of a big account like BT, for instance. When I eventually got into advertising, I realised the world was changing, and what I learnt early on has now helped me tremendously because the world's gone back to direct marketing on a super steroid basis.
But I found when I was working with you, I often say that some of the best planners can be creatives and some of the best creatives can be planners. So the idea of being an ad guy, the idea of being a person who just knows how to do advertising or how to sell something. And I remember when we started working together, I always got that feeling from you that you weren't just about, let's just kind of do wacky, crazy stuff. It was you still had that DNA inside your system from your early days.
I started off as an art director, then I became a writer. And when you become a writer, you really know and learn how to become a hawker and to really convince people to go over the line and part with their money and give it to you.
Yeah. Which
in advertising you don't quite do. You leave that to somebody else, like the dealer. Yeah. If you're a car salesman, for instance. Yeah. And so when I actually eventually got into advertising, I quite often had this kind of conflict because I started working with great people like Neil French and other people like Steve Eric and all those kind of guys who are pretty prominent in the day. But then we'd start talking about stuff in terms of what made great advertising. And I'd go, ooh, I'm not sure I believe that.
Yeah.
Because it kind of went against what I'd learnt.
So what prompted you to move to Asia? What were the reasons behind that or thinking behind that?
I don't know. I'd fallen out with a girl. She became a stalker. So to be absolutely blunt.
I'm sure she's not listening to this. And if you are, here's his number now.
I'm not saying who it is. I'm not naming the person. I was in O&M Direct for 6 years in London with my boss, Drayton Bird, who at the time was worldwide ECD for O&M Direct. I said, Drayton, I need to get out of London. He says, well, fun enough, Andy, we've got a place going in Singapore.
Did you know Singapore?
I read a few books.
Do you think it was in China?
Well, I didn't know geographically. I kind of knew it. I thought it was actually quite close to Japan because I'd read a lot of books about World War II where the Japanese invaded. So I thought, well, it must be quite close to Japan. Yeah. But he said, look, there's a place going in Singapore. We need someone quite quickly. Do you want to go there? And I went, yeah, okay. So I think I talked to him about this in October, and by January 9th, I was on a plane to Singapore. And I remember flying business class on Singapore Airlines, and you got these beautiful Singapore Airlines girls in their cabanas and stuff, putting blankets over you. I go, this is quite nice, isn't it? But I'd gone there on a 2-year contract, and I was supposed to go back to London. But after 2 years of living in Singapore, you suddenly have this lifestyle where you got a beautiful condo, you got a swimming pool, you got amazing food. Oh my God, you got some warm weather.
I remember when I went over there in '96, it was my first Christmas there. Like, I was about to go home for Christmas, but I was walking through like Chinatown trying to buy Christmas presents, and there was all this Bing Crosby was singing in these Italian places. I was like, oh, holy, and it was like 200 degrees. And I was sweating like a pig.
But it was also just I travelled quite a lot because my dad was in the army.
Right.
But it was just such a different culture. The rituals, you get both things like Chinese New Year, Hari Raya.
Yeah. So just on that, I'm very good friends with Major David Greenaway as well, who's Andy's dad. He'll probably be listening to this and sending it to his friends because he's very proud of Andy. But how much of an influence was your dad in your ability to up sticks and just take on an adventure? And
well, they say that your motives in life are formed by the time you're 10, and so I suppose I've had the travel bug ever since then,
without really knowing it,
maybe sometimes reluctantly as well. So I'm not an avid keen, I want to go and see these places. I just happened upon them in many ways.
You put down your roots in Singapore. You married a Singaporean lady. You have children from and was that about finally arriving somewhere that you felt?
Yeah, I suppose they say wherever you lay your hat is your home, right? And for me that was especially true. So I've been in Asia for 25 years. I haven't been in the UK that long, because I was in Cyprus, I was in Bahrain, I was in Germany. I've spent most of my life in Singapore now, and I still have an English accent, although I can still speak a bit of Singaporean.
Okay. What was it like actually when you landed and started working there?
It was, I came from a fairly hectic environment anyway, from a work point of view in O&M Direct. I mean, I was working 60 hours, up to 70 hours a week, and which was a big difference between my friends that got into advertising who, I remember going to my friends who were working at FCB at one point. They were coming in late because they had a hangover. So they'd start working at about 10 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, they're in the pub. Yeah.
So one solid hour.
Yeah, and the pub then shut by about, I think in those days, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So they kind of started to try and do some work again, but this time they're a bit tippled. And by about 5:30, they're back in the pub. And they did that every single day.
Wow.
I could never do that in my job.
Yeah.
We literally were in, not always early, sometimes we were in at kind of 9:30, but you were working till kind of 10 o'clock every night, and quite often you're going at the weekends, and that was the difference.
I had that in New York and a bit in Singapore when I first went there.
But you've got to remember those days in the mid-80s, agencies were still kind of fat, and people didn't work that hard. It was a real rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we weren't like that. We were the other way around. We worked our socks off.
So tell me about the Singapore to Hong Kong move and back to Singapore. What happened there? What was that?
Well, I mean, but going back to Singapore,
Sorry.
I haven't answered your first question. So I went there, and it wasn't dissimilar. It was very similar to the UK environment, except for suddenly I came across Singapore clients,
Right.
and they were different.
Yeah.
And they were quite where kind of the English clients were more tell me what I should do.
Yeah.
But also gave you a
have to decipher what
gave you a bit of authority and said, look, I want this kind of area.
Yeah.
Singapore clients were, no, I want this.
Right.
And they were very kind of directional. What I found out very quickly was that there were a lot of cultural nuances used against me in terms of my opinions. But within a year, I realised that they were quite often irrelevant.
Yeah.
And what I realised very quickly was that universally, people are the same. So they're the same desires. The desire for sex, the desire to be seen as prosperous, the desire for wealth, desire to be liked. They're the same everywhere in the world.
I felt that there was the biggest thing that's kind of affected our business, if I look back on my career, was just this. We lost trust somewhere along the line from our clients, or something happened where clients felt that they knew the answer.
I feel it's cyclical. At 26, I realised I had a lot of influence on clients, and I kind of taught them quite a bit. It's quite a grand thing to say, to be able to teach at 26, but I'd learned such a lot in that time. But what I've realised is that you kind of teach clients and they get on side, but then they retire or they go to another job, and then you got all these new guys coming through, and then suddenly they go through the whole cycle. They have to be retaught. Yeah. And I find that bizarre.
Because I remember even you and I used to go into meetings. We knew we had the answer. We knew we had something that was potent, but in the early days of data, it was like, well, who said that? And like, as a planner, you had to kind of almost reinforce your positioning or your strategy with a consumer soundbite.
Well, I got invited to a forum a while ago, and I can't even remember the guy's name, but he was a consultant who had various very, very senior CEO clients. But he said, look, Andy, I do these forums, and I get my clients basically choose a topic, and then I get antagonists and I get protagonists for that cause. And he decided to choose market research. If I'm going to take on these guys, I might actually be better off doing some research myself. And I found this book called Cognitive Psychology. It's the book that they all use at these big universities if you're going to graduate in psychology. And I thought, right, that'd be interesting. I wonder if there's anything about focus groups. There was one sentence that talks about focus groups.
Yeah.
And it basically said, focus groups don't work because humans lie. And that's all it said about it. And the rest of the book, which is about 600 pages, was about proper, deep cognitive science with research behind it. Proper research. Statistical research. So anyway, I turned up to my little forum, and I was the only antagonist against market research.
Yeah.
Everyone else was the head of Research International, head of Millward Brown. All these people. I read this sentence out, and every single one of them went, "Oh yeah, no, we agree with that. Yeah, no, focus groups don't." I said, "Really?" Because it seems to me that this is the heart of your business.
Yeah.
The other thing I realised about research is that it's not in their interest for your commercial to come out squeaky clean. So then how do they make money? If everything came out squeaky clean through Millward Brown research and other research as well, then what's their role?
Yeah, exactly.
So that whole part of the business as well, that there's got to be fault with your ad, or otherwise I'm not doing my job. And so that's the whole kind of dichotomy with this business.
Well, let's go back onto the chronology. So then there was a move from Singapore to Hong Kong, right?
So the guy I worked with in Singapore was a guy called Paul O'Donnell, and he got promoted to regional boss for Southeast Asia. And he said to me, "Look, Andy, I know you like Singapore. I'm going to Hong Kong. I'd love you to come there as my partner." And he said, "By the way, the handover's coming, so it's probably a good time to be there just because of the historical significance of it."
Around 97 now,
yeah. I saw this significant difference between Singapore and Hong Kong in just terms of the scale of the business. Hong Kong was massive. It made Singapore look like a minnow in terms of the volume of the work and the size of the work and the size of the opportunities. But it was big and it was fast and it had impact. And there's no tenders or anything. No, I want to give you the business. I like you. You can do me the good job, so I'm going to give you the job. But the agency was getting so many requests for pitches. They were getting 10 a week. And I remember they came to us and said, "Look, we've been approached by ESPN." And I hadn't heard of ESPN, because I'm English. Yeah. They hadn't heard of ESPN. But
a lot of people around the world have heard of them.
No.
Sorry, ESPN, if you're
So I said, "Well, what is it?" "Well, it's a sports channel, and they want to launch in Asia, and Hong Kong's their base." On the back of that, we actually didn't do any direct marketing. We just did proper kind of good old-fashioned ads. And we did some really nice ads. And Neil French had just joined. Neil French is, for those people in the audience that don't know, was the guru at the time in advertising. He was the godfather of advertising. And
in Asia.
In Asia. And he came into Hong Kong, and he happened to kind of come into the basement, which I like to call our bit, as a kind of bit underneath the rest of the agency in the dark shadows. The engine room. I showed him some of these ESPN ads. He says, "Oh my God, this is the best work I've seen across the region. And you're not even an advertising agency, you're the DM agency." So he started inviting me to his regional creative director meetings. Another brief came from the agency for Speedpost. And they were renowned to be kind of cheap, low budget, pretty hard to deal with. Yeah. What we didn't know was that they'd hired a new Postmaster General. So we won the pitch with work, which was okay, the strategy was good, but they really liked us. There was a chemistry in the room. And they came back and said, "Our Postmaster General thinks the work could be better. Can you push it further?" And we went, "Yeah, we can push it further." We went back with this work. We actually went back to this line, which was, "We put time on your side." Mm-hmm. And funny enough, at the time, DHL and FedEx were all doing just-in-time management. They were kind of focusing on all the kind of the corporates and logistics side of it. But as a result, it all became really bland and corporate and blancmange. So we went, "No, let's go back to we put time on your side." And we did these beautiful ads. And we went into the client, presented the work with great pride, and the Postmaster General did what all creative people hate to hear. "What does everybody else think?" You go, "Oh my God,
Death by 1,000
It's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. So it starts at the left of him. Well, I think it's the wrong audience. They went to the next person. Well, there's not enough promotion. And it went round about 15 people. And I'm going, oh my God, it's over. And they came back to the Postmaster General and he said, any more comments? And no one spoke. And he went, well, I think this is the best stuff since sliced bread. We're going to do it. And I went, oh my God, it's going to happen. But we did these beautiful ads, went into the market, massive impact. And we grew their market share from 3% to 12% in 6 months. And I remember later on when I went back to Singapore, when I was pitching for DHL Worldwide, I got talking about this campaign, and the DHL guy said, oh, we remember that campaign, that destroyed us.
Brilliant. And then at the same time, because I want to try and parallel, because I'm a big fan of your art, so you were doing Gluism. Tell us about Gluism.
Well, what happened there was, when I first went to Hong Kong, I'm quite a diligent person actually, I'm really bad at finances, so I usually like my company to take care of it for me.
Yeah.
So I went to my finance director and said, look, I know the tax rate here is 15%, great. Is there a way I can save every month? And he said, yes, you can purchase tax reserve certificates and I can do it for you. So great, sign me up. So a year later, I get my tax bill and I work out it's 30%, which is twice the Hong Kong rate. So I go to my finance director and I say, is there a mistake here? He says, oh, no, I forgot to tell you. The first year, they charge you double. I said, what? Well, they charge you double. So why is that? He says, just in case you do a runner, they've got the money in hand and they're not getting ripped off. So by the time I was planning to coming back to Singapore, I was a year in arrears in my tax. And I thought, well, how do I solve this? So I thought, I know, I'll be an artist. I'll do some art. And I told a few friends in the agency, I'm going to be an artist. I need to make some money, so I'm going to do some art. You can't be an artist. I said, why not? Of course I can be an artist. I started actually learning the kind of the techniques of the masters, the Rembrandt way of painting, which is you start with dark and you build up to light.
Yeah.
And I actually started copying Rembrandt portraits and giving them away as gifts. And then I don't know how it happened, but
do you think you can teach yourself art?
Yeah,
wow.
Definitely.
You're not born.
No.
Okay, it depends on how good you are.
But no, it's like anything. It depends how committed you want to be.
Yeah. Because your stuff was great. I mean, but talk about the glue thing.
Yeah, no. So I don't know how I stumbled upon that. Gluism is, I use latex glue, which is the stuff you use in woodwork, and I basically make almost like a Jackson Pollock pattern out of it. Yeah. And then let it dry and then paint over it, and it creates a lovely texture. So I kind of dubbed this the art of Gluism. I can't remember exactly how I got to it. I kind of blame my daughter in the official PR releases at the time. So I had a very unique style. I did about 10 paintings, and I went to one gallery, which I'd found. They weren't interested. And then the second gallery I went to was the Lankoy Fong Gallery. Mm. And they said, we love this. We've got a spare spot in November. Are you interested in taking that slot? This was about May time. And I said, well, what do I need to do? He said, well, you need 30 paintings for the gallery. And I had 10, but I knew only like 2 of them were good enough. Yeah. So I said, okay. And then so I had 2 jobs. I was doing my day-to-day job at work, and then at night time I was. You sold a shitload, right? Yeah. So I had the gallery, and I'd actually used my advertising skills to promote myself. I was on radio, I was on TV, I was in magazines. I had posters all over the place. So by the time the show happened, it was very, very well known. I sold 80% of the work, and then I started getting commissions. So I managed to pay off my tax bill, and I managed to pay off my credit card bill. Brilliant. And I managed to take the whole family off to a trip to Cebu for a nice 5-star
I love the
holiday.
I would actually level this at you. The actual work, as I've seen the work, I loved it. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, I know you're not going to sell work that's not good, but like, it's very interesting the motivation behind why you went and did it. But then you went and knuckled down and did it, and you got the money to clear whatever debt you had. It's fantastic. So you became chairman somewhere, right? In Ogilvy. Because I could never picture you as a chairman. Tell me what it was like being a chairman.
So I came back to Singapore in '98, and funny enough, I'd actually resigned from Ogilvy 1 in Hong Kong, and I was going to start up my own business. And I had a very, very good relationship with Amex. And I was starting to get a bit bored of corporate life and all the stuff that happens to us occasionally in our business. We go through cycles, I think. And I thought, I don't know, I'll set up my own business, Amex will come to me because they love me to bits, and I'll probably make $1 million a year. So I'd resigned, and then Steve Elric, who was the ECD of Singapore, resigned as well. And so they were looking for someone to take his place. And I've been going to Neil French's regional creative director meetings. And Mike Murphy, who was going to go over there as chairman, had basically said, well, who should I go to, Neil? Who should I employ as the new ECD? And he said, well, you should try young Greenaway. So they approached me. O&M Singapore was in deep, deep shit. It was losing clients left, right and centre. And it was a bit nightmarish, actually. But then Mike got moved out, and they brought in a guy called Tim Isaac. Me and him formed a really good partnership. I said to him, look, we've got to stop going for the government tenders. They're killing us because we haven't got the relationships. We did about 20 tenders in 2 years. We won 2 of them and came second in 80%. When you come second in 80% of the tenders, it means you've got the right strategy, the right work. You haven't got the relationship or the price.
Too expensive.
Yeah.
But what was the chairman thing? How did you become chairman?
So, then after 4 years of being there as ECD, Tim went off to try and sort out Bangkok. Tim came to me and said, look, we're looking at other people outside, but we'd really like you to have a crack at being the chairman. We think you'd be the right person. So I said yes. So I did that for 2 years. It was probably one of the golden periods of Ogilvy. We did incredibly well business-wise. We started doing government tenders again, but this time we started winning them because we got the formula right. We were winning awards left, right and centre. We were the most awarded agency at the time. We'd become like the number one in the Campaign Asia rankings 4 years in a row. I felt I became almost like a kindergarten teacher. I had big kid gloves on, and my job had become getting all the different MDs in the company to work together because we had a lot of companies. They wouldn't play together. So my job became getting them in a room and collaborating. We're all
what was the being a chairman bit like for you? Because what was that being chairman of Ogilvy Singapore like?
I think I got bored of it eventually. I keep on seeing this debate coming into the news at the moment about do creative people make great chairmen, great CEOs or bosses of agencies. I think they can, and quite often are great bosses of the companies. So they look at the right things. I think the problem for me, and this is probably a problem for many creative people, is that you can get bored. You become a suit. And that's what happened to me. I became a suit, and I got very bored very quickly. But after the 2 years, I'm going, all right, I'm doing a good job as a suit. I felt I was doing a good job as a suit. It was in the numbers. It was in the mood of the agency. People were very happy. The morale was high. I'd introduced a lot of things which were innovative and working. We were winning new business like you couldn't believe, and we were still winning all the awards. But I was bored, and I wanted to desperately get back to my creative DNA, if you like, and do stuff. So after that, I left to do my own mobile content company.
That's right.
And there was supposed to be a deal with Martin, which eventually fell through because he added so many clauses to my contract that my
really did he?
A bit of sarcasm there, surely. But my lawyer basically said, look, if you sign that, I'll cut your balls off because you'd be an idiot. So I pulled out. I was doing quite well in that space, but I just wasn't making enough money quickly enough to support my family lifestyle, which was quite rich at the time. And then the Saatchi thing came up, and I'd been talking to Saatchi a year earlier, and the job was still up that they'd offered me, and so I thought,
Craig Davis leaving.
Yeah,
we had a just a note slip to us that the bar is going to be opening in 10 minutes because we're in a little quiet bar in a hotel, and the barman was very kind to tell us that he'll be opening in 10 minutes, so we're probably going to get a lot more noisy, which will be good because we're going to the noisy stage of Andy's career now. Okay, we've been kicked out of the bar because it's getting all noisy, and we're just finishing our conversation now in the foyer of Andy's hotel. And it's a good time to maybe wind it down. So Andy and I started working together then in Singapore, and he's now at Sapient. So tell me about the whole Sapient thing that you're doing right now.
From about 2008 at Saatchi, I kind of realised that, well, I'd known for a long time that the world had been going digital, but I realised in 2008 that we were missing the boat, and it was critical to get Saatchi into the digital space. And that proved really hard. There was just
Why?
I think it came from the very top. It came from Kevin's. I'll be very open about this.
Yeah.
It came from Kevin's obsession with love marks. He was so obsessed by leaving his legacy around love marks. I remember having a few conversations with him, worldwide creative board meetings, around the need to be digital and that we need to transform a company to embrace a digital way of thinking. And his response was always, everything's digital. Even cameras are digital now, and which I always thought was a bit strange. But it was a massive barrier, and we had some forays into the digital space quite successfully, but then it kind of fell back because there's no commitment behind it from a company point of view. So by about 2000...
It was one of my main frustrations and why I left, you know.
Yeah. And so by about 2000 and... when was it? 2012? I was going through this horrible period where I kind of said, no way I'm going to do a scam. It's going to kill our business because it wasn't real. So I want to get
scam, of course, being advertising that is just done for reward purposes.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. So I wanted to get back to transforming a client's business, and that meant that we couldn't focus on scam because we weren't big enough, didn't have the resources. So from about 2008, I stopped doing it. And in Saatchi, the pressure you'd have on yourself, and I did have, for not winning the awards every year that you used to, was tremendous. But I just stuck to my guns and I said, no, I'm doing the right thing. And then finally, by about 2012, I thought, look, I can't change this company. Can't do it. They've set their course, and the rudder's been glued, can't move, and it's on its way. Yeah. And I didn't believe in it. So I got approached by Sapient, and I thought they were a boutique little agency when I first started talking to them. And then I started to learn that they were actually a very big agency, mostly North American based. And Asia was more of a startup situation for them. But they had twice as many people in their organisation and twice the revenues. And I thought, oh my God, I haven't heard of these guys, and they're already double the size.
Well, very clever, because they went kind of back end first and then went front end, right?
But they realised about 6 years ago that their audience was CTOs, Chief Technology Officers. But what was happening was that CMOs were being brought to the party.
Yeah.
So they had this new kind of client coming in. So if we were building for the CTO and the CMO's coming in and say, well, that doesn't actually help me with what I'm trying to do, you lose the business.
Yeah.
So they were ahead of the time actually in terms of actually recognising that these two roles were merging.
Yeah.
So they're now calling these CTOs and CMOs a partnership now more and more. So they became an agency about 6 years ago and started hiring people like me, not necessarily advertising people, but people who got the new digital ecosystem and where it was going. I talked to many people in Sapient, and all the stuff I talked about in terms of dialogue, creating engagement, finding new channels and ways to get to consumers. Everyone seemed to agree with what I was saying, and it sounded like I was talking to people who were kind of clones of myself almost.
Yeah.
So
in a way, it's kind of full circle.
Yeah. So it became right back to the direct marketing story. This is direct marketing, but on steroids. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. You know, you can talk to people and automate it as well.
And weirdly, they're hiring you for your ad thing, not for your direct marketing.
I suppose.
I've never asked you this question. I'd like to ask it to you as a closer, which is, what's the one ad that you didn't do that you'd love to have done? And it can be top ahead.
I could say Gorilla. I would never have written a Gorilla. It's not in my mindset. I've got a different way of thinking about stuff.
I remember when it came out first, I was at Saatchi, and I sent a note round to, all the guys and girls around the region saying, this is the sort of advertising we need to, God, no chance. Yeah. But, the P&G needs to be doing. And I got these, what is that? Huh? Again, going back to the thing about the ammunition I now have, is that Byron Sharp, in his book, How Brands Grow, he talks about meaningless distinctiveness, which is a gorilla drumming, beats meaningful differentiation, which is we've got more raisins in our chocolate every time. Who wants to hear that from Cadbury? But the problem is, and you saw what happened, they tried to repeat it. They didn't actually know what they were doing. It was like a one-off kind of, because the follow-up ads after, none of them hit the same.
Well, I've got a view on, I love the meaningless distinction stuff. However, I think it's relevant to a specific part of advertising, especially FMCG stuff. I've got a slightly different view. I think there are three main categories, which are the aspirational brands, where people want it for a certain reason, for their own self-personification, which goes back to people being 10 years old and what drove them then almost.
you've got a big broad swathe of brands which fill that kind of middle bit, which is like, beers and stuff like that, and chocolates. And then you've got these other things which are smaller niche, which is Stain Devils and Dulcolax and Oxy, which are problem-solving brands. Yeah. Where I want to know what it does. Yeah. Because I've got a problem and I need to get it fixed. Yeah. So
I think it comes to a point where, as well, when brands are very well known for what they do. So when everyone knows what Gillette does and how it shaves, that's when you have to bring it to another level. I know you. Keep telling me what you do all the time. I got it, All right, look, that's a good time to finish. We've been moving around this hotel foyer trying to reduce noise. It's been fantastic. We're looking out on a little French street here in the sunshine as the sun goes down, and we actually, during one of the pauses, managed to get a beer and
made of quinoa.
Yeah, some beer from.
There you go.
The beer is made from.
So which
quinoa.
category is this? Is it aspirational? Or is it minister distinction?
I know it doesn't.
Problem-solving beer. I've no idea.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have any gluten in it.
Does it say sans gluten?
Yeah, it says sans gluten, which is probably no gluten. Anyway, Andy, as ever, a pleasure to see you and to meet you and to talk to you, and I hope to have you on again.
Great pleasure, Shawnee, as always.
Say hi to your dad.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Major.